Friends, welcome back. This is the next session, and we have Dr. Dani and Vladimir, who are program managers on Microsoft Azure data team, and they're working on a lot of innovative solutions related to Azure SQL, Azure Managed Instance, and it's great. They have a tremendous amount of experience and expertise in the data world and Azure SQL world. So their topic is start modernizing your workloads at scale with managed instance. This is the only session that we have on Azure SQL Managed Instance, and since the time it went GA, it has gained a lot of attention. So we're very thankful that they have joined and they are sharing their expertise and how you can really build solution on Azure SQL Managed Instance. So Dr. Dani and Vladimir, over to you. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm stopping my screen share and you can share your screen now.
Thank you. You're welcome. So I've shared my screen. Let me know if you can see it.
Absolutely perfect.
Yes, hi. So I'm Dani Ljepava, Program Manager at Microsoft Azure Data Product Group. And I'll let my colleague introduce himself.
Hi, can you guys hear me? This is Vladimir. My name is Vladimir Ivanovic. I'm also Program Manager on the Azure SQL Managed Instance product team. Dani and I are both based in Belgrade, and we're sitting with 100 plus other Azure SQL engineers working on Managed Instance and other Azure SQL solutions. We're super happy to be with you today, and we have some exciting updates to share.
Mm-hmm. And here is our agenda for today. So we're going to introduce the current state of Azure SQL Managed Instance. We're going to have some sneak peek into the future of what we're working on, roadmap, and we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. And now over to Vladimir to kick this off.
Thank you, Dani. All right, so we wanted to start first with the overview of Azure SQL. I'm not sure if everybody's on the call is familiar with all of the different products and solutions. So the very first Azure SQL Managed Database offering was Azure SQL DB, or for the purpose of this portfolio overview, Azure SQL Single Database. It's the first service that started the journey about 10 years ago. And it's probably the most familiar one to the wider audience since it's been around for a long while. It's also the only offering today that offers serverless compute in the portfolio. The next one, and also historically, the second one to appear was Elastic Pools. Essentially, a pool is a model that allows you to put many databases into a single resource container or Elastic Pool, allowing to effectively share resources amongst databases. And for a very large period of time, this was pretty much the entire offer, but we've added more capabilities to this. And the very next one is going to be what we're going to spend most of our time today, which is Azure SQL Managed Instance. So compared to Azure SQL Database, Managed Instance offers a fully managed SQL Server instance rather than a single database, and has been designed to offer easy lift and shift and migration experience since it offers a near complete compatibility with existing on-premises SQL Server's applications. Two other innovations that are very important for Managed Instance is the full support for virtual network injection. So Managed Instance can be part of customers' virtual network, which is also one of the most requested features we got for Azure SQL for a long while. Again, making a Managed Instance the ideal database for the ideal destination for cloud migrations. And then the other angle to this is the instance pool capability. So similar to how you can put more than one database in an elastic database pool, instance pools are the equivalent capability for Managed Instance. So this allows you to combine more than one instance into a single resource container and allowing you to go smaller than what a single instance can do in terms of number of cores. So instance pool pools allow you to go to 2 vCore, while single instance, the smallest possible size is 4 vCores. And instance pools are currently in preview. And then finally, and this is, one sec, the SQL Server virtual machines. Again, this is an IaaS service, infrastructure as a service, and also familiar with, I'm guessing, most of the folks on the call. You get full access to the VM. Unlike all the managed services, database and managed instance, SQL Server allows customers more control, but provides fewer manageability options. So it's a trade-off that some customers have to make today. So for applications where absolute control on the VM is strictly required, including controlling the OS versions and all the host applications, customers with such requirements have to go to VMs today. In addition to this, VMs offer the capability to go back to previous versions of SQL Server. This is also one important difference I want to call out. So both Azure SQL Database and Managed Instance always run on latest and greatest version of SQL Server, which most of the time is a huge boon because you get the latest bits in terms of performance and security, but sometimes it can be a nuisance since some applications have strict certification to a particular SQL Server version. And such deployments today have to go to the VM SKU. And then, as per the intro, please share your questions in the chat, and we'll get to them during the Q&A part. Moving on. So I want to step back a little bit and see and tell you a little bit about how we design Managed Instance. And I'm really proud to say that the team in Belgrade that Dani and I work for was spearheaded the Managed Instance effort, and a large part of the product development from the inception to kind of full-blown production are being driven from the Belgrade office. So one of the realizations we had with Azure SQL is that not all of our customers are able to essentially adapt their application to the database as a service surface area and concepts. We had customers coming to us and saying that they love the platform as a service capabilities, but they have various kinds of challenges in refactoring their existing SQL Server applications. So we wanted to create a super easy lift and shift solution for them that allows super easy migrations and has near perfect compatibility with SQL Server. And this was and still is one of the key investments of the Azure SQL product group, and is a central part of our future strategy. Essentially, is the crown jewel of the Azure SQL portfolio, and a direction we're going to be investing in heavily in the following years. Hence, making it probably the best bet for your business going forward. The other angle, next slide, Dani, please. The other angle which we feel is really important to call out is best practices about the migrations. So something we as the team, working with customers for the last couple of years, pretty much on a daily basis, learned is that, first off, there are workloads that work really well in this model, as in it's super easy to lift and shift them and from on-premises into the cloud, and leveraging essentially gaining all of the benefits of a fully managed solution. And this list is not exhaustive, but probably some of the best candidates when you look at what kind of workloads are the easiest to migrate into the cloud environment are data marts applications, SharePoint Farms, Dynamics NAV, or in general, applications that are talking to a single SQL Server instance and possibly with multiple database applications. So essentially, if your app is contained to a single SQL instance today, it should be fairly easy to migrate into the cloud with very minor changes. And then in terms of the process, what we've learned so far, again, in the customer engagements, is that the best strategy, as when many things is software development, is to chunk a big problem into stages. So all at once migrations of the entire data center, for example, or the entire application portfolio for large customers are super complex. So our recommendation when looking at how to migrate is actually to identify a best set of candidate workloads for the first batch, and then migrate workloads in batches, take a set of applications, migrate them, learn, implement the learnings, and repeat. And the list we have on the slide makes for the great candidates to use as starting applications and starting point. And to be fully transparent and honest here, there's no such thing as zero change migrations, because many of the on-prem applications today assume perfect connectivity and assume the collocation of the database tier and the application tier, since typically applications and databases are hosted in the same data center, very close to each other and very close to the end users. And some of these assumptions change as you lift and shift your application and your database into the cloud. So in addition to the best practices listed here, some of the typical bottlenecks or essentially pain points as you go to the migrations are the connectivity architecture, where it's pretty much required to install retry logic into your app in case connection breaks, which happens rarely, but does happen in the cloud scenario. And then also to consider introducing caching if the application has frequent round trips to the database. But those two techniques are well documented, and at this point in time, something there's lots of evidence for and lots of patterns to learn about. And these things are unique to managed instance, so we wanted to call them out here with you and for you. This is what we had in mind for the quick overview and in terms of setting the table. Now the next section is going to be about the roadmap and the capabilities. So we wanted to tell you a little bit, working with the product group, about what is in our plan and where we want to take managed instance as the product. But before we go towards the future, we want to take a quick recap in terms of what's happened in managed instance in the last calendar year, roughly. And as you can see real quick, the main themes that where we invested in is the further improving the app compatibility of the managed instance with SQL Server. And some of the key feedback points that we received over the previous 2 years have been fixed and are being fixed and addressed in this work stream, which is a continuous one. We want to get to 99.9999, as close as we can get to SQL Server. There's also significant work that went into deployments. We went from 8 core minimum to 4 core minimum in terms of the instance sizes, provided better flexibility for subscriptions, larger quotas, and also instance pools, essentially further improving the TCO and reducing the entry bar for us actually getting into the managed instance world in terms of the cost. Now, networking and connectivity is a very large part of our investment, for the reason that a lot of this is new for managed instance. So Azure SQL gave us a lot of building blocks, Azure SQL Database, when we started managed instance, but networking and connectivity and the VNet injection aspect is something we had to start pretty much from scratch. And there's a plethora of smaller and larger improvements coming pretty much every month related to networking, and there's more to it. When it comes to networking and connectivity, there are two main themes. One is the intrusion prevention, essentially making sure that managed instance is walled off within your VNet and that nobody else can access it in any way. And think that part of the journey is fully complete. Now we're finalizing the usability enhancements to the second main scenario there, which is the data exfiltration prevention. Today, there are user and service tags used to ensure that the service management traffic is segregated from the user's traffic, and that we have very clean and strong boundaries between the two. We want to get to the world where this traffic is fully separated in separate VNet adapters, and this is something that is going to come in the next couple of months. And also the platform as a service, the final piece here is, again, an ever-evolving story for the entire Azure SQL, including managed instance. And here, we're catching up with the latest in Azure SQL and making sure we get the full parity in terms of all the platform as a service capabilities. So GA of failover groups and TD, bring your own key, are the two highlights for the past couple of months. The other theme, in addition to the feature and capabilities, is the regional availability of managed instance. And we now have managed instance in pretty much every geography. You can see the list of some of the regions where last year managed instance was lit up in. Next slide, please, Dani. Mm-hmm. So going forward, is going to be a large part of our presentation. So if you had any questions about the product design and strategy so far, or the parts of the roadmap that were already shipped last year, please leave them in the comments. We wanted to make sure that we have the largest possible amount of time to discuss the most interesting part, which is where we're going forward. So the calendar year 2020 and beyond roadmap has several aspects. And when it comes to improving performance and scale, and this has been, again, a constant piece of feedback from our customers ever since the start of Azure SQL, we want bigger, better, larger, and more performant instances and SKUs. One of the major pain points of managed instance initially was the log weight limitation, which was not enough for some of the more demanding workloads, and also saw prolonged bulk load and data migration times due to the log weight limits. So our team spent significant cycles on this, and we're about to roll out a set of improvements to improve the log weight throughput considerably by 2 to 3x in both general purpose and business critical service tiers, making them even better suited to some of the demanding log generating workloads. So high throughput transactions or bulk load bound workloads or processes are going to see considerable improvements here. We did some measurements all the way from TPCC and other transaction workloads into the TPCH and data warehousing style workloads, and we saw anywhere from 2 to 4x and above improvements in throughput. So this is something we're really proud of. And then the working name for this is essentially Performance 2.0. It's a major set of re-architectures. We think of this as just a brand new engine for the managed instance. The other piece, which is super exciting, is the Hyperscale service tier. I assume some or many of you have heard about the Hyperscale support in Azure SQL Database. We want to bring this new capability for managed instance as well, and this is also in flight. We have a section on this at the very end of the deck, so I'll just I'll leave it for that moment. So let's move on. The other part is ever increasing improvements to the compatibility with SQL Server. And if you recall the slide about the migration best practices, we mentioned that the applications targeting a single instance are the easiest to migrate today. And the reason for that is that the cross-instance capabilities are something we're working on right now. It's essentially part of our current set of sprints. So distributed transactions and cross-instance service broker are some of the capabilities that are going to further improve the compat on this cross-instance set of scenarios. So hopefully by the end of this calendar year, the applications requiring cross-instance transactions and cross-instance service broker will also be super easy to migrate on Azure SQL MI. We're also investing into making it easy to host SSRS databases on SQL MI, which is also one of the important asks we've received over the past couple months. Now I want to give it over to Dani, who is the expert on the virtualization, as you will learn further down the deck. Dani, all you.
Thank you. So data virtualization is another aspect that after the roadmap overview, I will be diving into more details. We've realized the importance of data liberalization, data liberty in terms of access. So why to be constrained only to OLTP workload? There is a whole world of data in data lake, and the vision, and probably you've heard of Azure Synapse, trying to combine all of those analytical aspects into a single product. We thought, well, why shouldn't we liberate the data in the sense that we would make it available to managed instance as well? So in this respect, what's coming to managed instance, and I will talk about it more a few slides later, is data virtualization ability of managed instance to tap into the data lake, into Azure Synapse. And in that way, users would be able to combine both analytical and OLTP workload. And I will also show some examples in that area. What's also coming and what's very interesting in the analytical workspace is that we're introducing the ability for machine learning services. We'll be introducing Python and R support for managed instance, and this will give the capabilities now that you have tapped into these analytical workloads and into this vast amount of data. It will give capabilities to actually process that data, to have a meaning of it, to build machine learning models that will enable you to draw meaningful conclusions from your data to power your businesses and to power your daily work lives. Another thing that we're extending is support for all SSIS deployments with introduction of new ADF version 2 model. Next, what's coming to managed instance, probably if you have deployed, if you're familiar with managed instance and if you have deployed it, in terms of its current experience, you do know that provisioning of managed instance takes a relatively longer amount of time, and that that time could vary. Managed instance is specific in the respect that we provision a whole virtual cluster for you. And that provides unique capabilities in Azure, that provides a complete isolation of managed instance. And to actually make it happen, all of that takes time. So the team has worked a lot on the provisioning part to make the deployment predictable in terms of time that it will take to deploy managed instance, and to transparently display on screen the steps that it's at in terms of provisioning, not only for provisioning, but also once you provision managed instance for scaling operations. So for example, if you're switching between service tiers, if you're switching between managed instance general purpose and managed instance business critical, we are now making it, making the experience way better by clearly exposing all the actions that are happening. You'll be able to understand the steps and the time those operations will take. So this improvement this area gives the predictability and better manageability of the existing operations. Another thing that we're also proud to introduce, and that we had lots of customer asks for, would be CMW, controlled maintenance window with notifications. As you are aware, Managed Instance is a PaaS service, so all the updates and all the patches are automatically done by Azure. That means that your Managed Instance is always at the latest version. But sometimes, depending on an update, if it's maybe an update requiring a failover, sometimes it can disrupt very briefly application workloads, and some of the very old legacy applications are not really good with retry logics, and that might be an issue for some of our customers. So the controlled maintenance window will provide the ability for you to actually choose a slot when you would like the maintenance of the managed instance to happen, and then we will guarantee that that maintenance will happen in that particular time frame that you have chosen. This will allow better predictability and planning for you, such that you can also watch for your applications. Maybe if you need to do something on the application side, you will now know exactly when that will happen or what time frame that will happen in. Related to this feature, we also plan to introduce advanced notifications such that you are notified when we're performing the operations for you. So we're making this all transparent and more easier for you to see. Another ask that we had outstanding was long-term backup retention. Long-term backup retention was actually, as of recently, provided in a limited public preview. Our documentation pages are updated with this. It enables up to 10 years long-term backup retention, which might be critical for some of the enterprises to have access or backup to the data for very, very long term in terms of years. And another feature that that's coming on the roadmap is the accelerated database recovery. That means that you'll be able to recover your databases much faster than it is possible to do today. A couple of more things before we dive into some of the future and the demos is instance DNS alias. We've heard the feedback in terms of the when you're actually moving to managed instance and when you need to repoint your application to connect. Let's say you're migrating from on-prem to managed instance, and then you need to repoint your application connection string. Sometimes that could be a problem. So what we're enabling with instance DNS alias is the ability for managed instance to be connected with a CNAME. In other words, that means that you'll be able to repoint your application just by changing the DNS at the backend versus the actual connection string. So this will make it much easier for you to switch your applications to start using managed instance. In terms of service endpoint policies for Azure Storage, we're making some security improvements in that respect and introducing specific policies on accounts that can use Azure Storage, and this provides an additional layer of security, which specifically is important for customers that are security sensitive. Some of you might be using managed instance in disaster recovery scenario. Managed instance supports failover groups. You could have two managed instances in being synced through geo-replication. And today, in order to sync two managed instances, they're connected in geo-replication, let's say into separate regions. One might be maybe India, other might be in the US, is that today, in order for that traffic to flow, you need to use your own VPNs, your own gateways, so the traffic goes through your environment. To actually help with that network traffic, we're introducing global peering, whereas the Azure backbones will be used to transfer that traffic between two managed instances. And with that, we're making an amazing improvement. We are releasing the network traffic from your VPNs, from your gateways, and therefore giving you more bandwidth to use Azure if you have managed instances in GeoDR replicated scenarios. Another improvement that we're making is allowing heterogeneous resources with MI subnet. As you're probably aware, MI is deployed in subnets, in VNets, so that makes managed instance completely secure and isolated. And that's an advantage of the managed instance, but at the same time, it could be an issue because maybe some applications cannot access that protected area, cannot access that VNet. That was actually one of the reasons why we have introduced a public endpoint, a capability for applications to be able to connect through public endpoint outside of the VNet. But with the introduction of heterogeneous resources within with managed instance subnets, we will allow actually other resources as well to be joined or to be part of the same MI subnet, which will make the integration or more native integration in that virtual network possible. And I think that's going to be a great improvement to integrate all kinds of applications and services even further with managed instance. Lastly, some of the last improvements on the roadmap I'm going to talk about is log replay service. We will be introducing a log replay service where you will be able to replicate logs from your on-prem environment to managed instance. This will make the orchestration of migrations even more customizable. Today, migration of data from on-prem environments to managed instance is used using Azure Data Migration Service. But with actually having a direct access to it, you will be able to orchestrate the migration completely custom in the way you want, and that has been an ask we've heard from customers. With DMS, which is currently being used as a migration, sometimes depending on what's going on in terms of the traffic, in terms of databases, sometimes those migrations could be lengthy, or there could be maybe retries in terms of if there are maybe transient errors along the way. We will be introducing resumable migration through log replay, so you will be able to actually pause and resume migration, which I think is going to be another amazing improvement. And lastly, I think this is our crown jewel, crown piece in terms of long-term strategy, long-term vision. I'm going to talk more about it in the next slide, is hybrid distributed availability groups. We want to make it possible to have near real-time replication of data from on-prem SQL Server, or it could be SQL Server in a VM as well, to managed instance. So at the same time, you could have both your SQL Server and managed instance online, and the data is replicated from your SQL Server to managed instance near real time, and then you can use it for all kinds of different scenarios, which I will cover in my next slides. So in terms of the roadmap, those would be the high-level points of really cool stuff, really awesome improvements that we're working on introducing for managed instance. And I have chosen two topics to actually from the roadmap that I've disclosed to talk more about. And we call the sneak peek into the future. You are actually the first people we're showing this to, so this is like exclusive preview of what's coming with two particular features. One feature that I've chosen is the data modernization through data virtualization. That's the ability of managed instance to establish a PAL-based connection to Azure, to Synapse SQL Analytics, and with that, your ability to access data in the data lake. How that's going to work, we are going to map an external table to Synapse SQL Analytics, and from within MI, you will be able to query data lake. Now, the interesting thing about, or actually really amazing thing about Synapse SQL Analytics is that it also supports all kinds of open file formats, also unstructured file formats. So this is very interesting that you will be able to query unstructured file formats for managed instance, be it CSV, JSON files, open source Parquet files. It really will open up this amazing possibility for you to not only use OLTP data on your managed instance, but you will also be able to tap into this whole world of data in the data lake, and also you will be able to combine the queries and maybe join queries and do combined data analysis in this respect. So we call this data liberalization, and I think it's going to open much more possibilities to smartly use your data in the cloud. Now, because all of this is in the cloud, if we put machine learning services on top, if we consider all kinds of analytical tools that we have available in Azure Cloud, besides the access to an amazing amount of data, you now will be able to analyze, to use, to predict different things that interest you and maybe your organization. And we think this is a future and really amazing move into combining best of the both worlds. If you're interested in this type of scenario, we're always interested in customer feedback, and we're interested in maybe in testing things during preview. In the left-hand side corner, you have the URL where there's a survey which we invite you to fill out on your needs in these scenarios, and there's also an email if you'd like to reach to the team, maybe to inquire more, or if you have actual need for this kind of scenario. Another topic, the second topic that I wanted to kind of explain more into details is the hybrid link between on-prem environment and managed instance, which is going to enable a really cool scenario of having your SQL Server on-prem or in VM. We are going to enable you to establish a distributed availability group that's typically used to join two different domains together, and to have near real-time replication of managed instances in the cloud. In this scenario, you can keep this setup permanently, for example, and you can use managed instance in the cloud as a read, for read scale out, as a read-only secondary. Then you can do your analytics in the cloud, or maybe you can offload your read workload in the cloud, maybe move your applications to the cloud. But important thing here to note is that you will still remain, your primary will be on-prem SQL Server or in the VM. So you will still, if you'd like to do it that way, and if you have application dependencies, you will be able to still keep your primary for as long as you want. When you're ready to migrate to the cloud, and this is completely optional, we will offer a way for you to seamlessly fail over to managed instance, to sever that connection and continue running into the cloud. Also, our team is looking for feedback. So the call to action here would be a survey if you'd like to fill out to tell us more about how would you be using these scenarios, and you can reach out to the product group with the email provided in the left corner. I will close this with a combined end-to-end scenario. So I would call this best of the both worlds. This is where we combine the hybrid environment with the on-prem that I have just discussed, and where we combine the access of managed instance to the data lake, just to show a complete picture of the future, and managed instance being the central piece of it, being able to seamlessly integrate in a hybrid environment, replicate data near real time from on-prem SQL Server, and fetch the data from the data lake. I would, because we don't have
Dani,
much time. Yeah.
So we're at 20 minutes too. So let's make sure we have enough time for questions. We have some questions in the Q&A and also some on the YouTube channel. So I suggest we go to the Hyperscale and wrap it there, and then open for questions. And folks, if you have any other questions, now is a good time to share them.
Sure.
So the Hyperscale tier of Azure SQL Database is something which is available for about a year now. And it dramatically changes how the storage engine, which is the core and the central piece of any relational database, works. So common ask for many of our very large customers is support for very large database sizes, more than 4 and more than 8 terabytes in size. So this is something that we end up hearing very often, and we're investing a lot of time to figure out how to solve. And Hyperscale is something that is probably one of the largest innovations in relational database and SQL Server for many years now, as it allows us to go to database sizes that are in tens of terabytes and provide multiple readable replicas and still maintain great price performance profile. So here's how it works. One more transition, Dani, please. One more? Yes, so the key thing here, and this is a busy diagram, but the essence of it is essentially separating the log service and page servers and database compute into separate microservices that can be hosted independently and that can be scaled independently. So your SQL Server on premises in a VM and in managed instance today runs on a single box, and that has scalability limitations, as we all know. You can only buy so big hardware, and the only way around that in the software industry is going from scale up to a scale out paradigm. Database engines being as complex as they are, they're not easy to move into this scale out pattern. And this innovation took a number of years and major research innovations, essentially industry defining. There are several papers published about the architecture of the Hyperscale SQL Server. This is something that's live in Azure SQL Database and is coming to Azure SQL Managed Instance at some point in the future. So several questions.
This is like reinventing the SQL engine.
And again, something that doesn't happen very often, if you will, once in a generation. But it's a huge step towards, and something that is going to be a foundational pillar for Azure SQL in the years to come.
Mm-hmm.
We have about 15 minutes, so Dani, let's open up for questions. I want to read them through from the Q&A window to make sure that we've covered all. There was a question about what are the best practices to migrate an on-premise database to SQL Azure. There's a table with millions of rows. Is there any possibility of a data loss during migration? This is a a detailed question. So our recommendation is to use the migration tooling. The Azure SQL Database Migration Assistant is an excellent starting point here, and it'll guide the customer all the way from the stage of evaluating the on-premise portfolio of service and databases to identifying the suitable destinations for each of those in the Azure SQL, to executing the migration itself through a variety of different methods, including offline and online migration, some of which have this zero data loss capability. Dani, did you want to add something to this? This is more along your lines of expertise.
Yeah, I think it's always a good practice to run the data migration assistant which will tell you what to pay attention on. But I think you covered the question well. Thank you.
Is LRS similar to log shipping?
Yes. Yeah, for short, yes.
Short
yeah.
question and short answer.
Yeah, it is that.
How will the future of DBA work look in MI? This is an amazing question, and something we definitely want to spend time discussing. So, as a DBA on premises, there are many things you have to do on a daily basis in terms of errands, making sure that the backups are being taken and running, and doing some of the routine work. And this changes a bit as databases move into the cloud, and especially into the managed services. As in, I think a good way to put it is the database admin's job becomes more interesting, because a lot of this essentially routine and, if you will, kind of regular busy work of a DBA, which is super sensitive but repetitive and often happens at odd hours, weekends, evenings, etc., can now be handled automatically by the service, so that the DBA has more time to focus on worrying about what's coming next, tuning the performance, designing the system, and doing all of the development focused tasks rather than just the routine and maintenance focused tasks, which often, based on the research and the interviews that we did, consume a lot of DBA's time, but not just consume a lot of time, but cause the most frustration. So I think DBA's job becomes as relevant as it ever was, but becomes far more interesting with this new level of automation and support provided by the service. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think that's good, and I think I would add that DBA job is, by all means, with all the modernizations, with all the cloud innovations, technology, DBA job is not going away. It's essentially becoming a smarter job in that respect. That all the manual tasks that you have been doing are now getting more and more automated, such that you have more time to do more valuable things. So that'd be my take on this question.
All right. Data visualization is a feature of SQL 2019. How is it different in MI? And there was another question related to SQL 2019 differences and capabilities being exposed in MI or not. So conceptually, it's the same set of bits and functionalities that run both in the cloud and on premises. Those are not two separate products. SQL Server.exe, the core engine, is the same. The code base is the same. Now, the data virtualization in particular looks different in the cloud today compared to how it looks on premises. But we're working to bridge that gap. And for those of you who've seen Microsoft's Ignite and some of the exciting Satya's announcements, and also announcements from Rohan Kumar, who's the head of Azure Data. The hybrid scenarios, ones that Dani mentioned, and Azure Arc, essentially ability to have a managed service running not just in Microsoft's data center, but also on premises, and then build experiences that span these ecosystems is a big focus for Microsoft. We believe that we're uniquely positioned to bridge public clouds with your own data centers and the edge and create a coherent data state for you. So coming back to the question, data virtualization is a central part of that. Ability to access any data, any shape or form, any location through SQL and through tools that know how to talk to SQL is something that's going to be an increasingly more streamlined and more powerful experience with every iteration to any of our services, including SQL 2019 on-premises and all the way to our cloud products. So we're going to make this experience more connected and smoother going forward. Next question is about migrating a large database. And Dani and I already touched upon this. Our recommendation is to use the database migration assistant and then use the best practices and guidance there.
Yeah. So today, the best way to do that is using data migration service. And that's our recommended option at this time. With the delivery of the hybrid solution that I've talked about, I think that experience is going to be even more improved and even more amazing. At least it's going to be another option for you to migrate really large amounts of data very efficiently.
So next question is about data synchronization between on-premise and managed instance. And this is a difficult question to answer in general without understanding what the use cases are and what direction the data flows through, and what the volume of the data is and what SLAs or service level objectives a application needs to meet. There are a number of ways to make sure that the data is kept in sync, and the most effective one will depend on the exact scenarios. So I would recommend sending an email, and then we can follow up on the details.
Yeah, I would assume from that question maybe that they were referring to transactional replication. I might only add that when our LRS log shipping service becomes available, that might be a better method maybe for you to have the data in sync. So not sure what specific issues you had. You can send us an email, but if I can guess, that'd be my take on it.
What about business critical in managed instance? Business critical is alive and well. Thank you very much. And it's going to continue to be a pillar of managed instance into the future. The design point for business critical is about the improved high availability and also improved transactional throughput. So these scenarios continue to be super relevant, and we're going to continue to invest in business critical.
Yeah, so everything that we talked about applies to both business critical and general purpose managed instance.
File groups is one of the capabilities which are not supported in managed instance today. And for obvious reasons, I think having access to the operating system of a machine is something which is very difficult to offer in a managed service environment and in a model where Microsoft is hosting the databases. So for file groups, the solution is to use Azure SQL VMs at this point.
Right. I love the next question.
Yeah, the difference between SQL MI and SQL Server and AKS. This one is interesting as well. So AKS, or Azure Kubernetes Service, is a managed service that offers Kubernetes cluster with management capabilities. And you can install SQL Server in an AKS cluster, but it's going to be similar or more similar to a SQL Server on a VM, as in that you still have to do all of the tuning and configuring of that server, while the Kubernetes cluster and the AKS service will do resource management for you. So it's similar to infrastructure as a service much more than it is to a fully managed service that offers managed backups, high availability, and many more capabilities.
Yeah, so difference would be PaaS versus IaaS, managed instance being PaaS, and then the AKS offering being more of IaaS in that respect.
Yep. Next question, PowerShell, yes, by all means, supported a managed instance. Link server from on-prem to MI. This one is not allowed. While options are available for cross-database queries, multiple DBs on the same server or across multiple server, today cross-database queries are not supported. We're working to enable this. This has been one of the most voted for customer capabilities or customer asks for managed instances for a while now. So this is going to show up over the next couple of months. Is there a bottleneck in Azure Database? If there is a bottleneck in Azure Database, will migrating to MI help improve I/O performance? This is an interesting question, and Azure SQL Database and Azure SQL Managed Instance share many or most of the underlying building blocks, which is essentially the lower level infrastructure services in Azure, such as Azure Storage, Azure Networking, Azure VMs. Given that we're using the same infrastructure, performance profiles of these services are comparable. So Azure SQL DB Premium is comparable to Managed Instance Business Critical, and Azure SQL DB Standard is comparable to General Purpose MI.
Yeah, but don't you think that with Perf 2.0 improvements that you spoke of, that MI will be?
The core, essentially VM that hosts the Azure SQL MI or Azure SQL Database is the same. So in the limit, the services will have very similar performance, and differences will likely stem to how a particular application or a workload uses the service. But in general, there shouldn't be difference. Now this question, application and SQL MI on the same cloud server. Oh, okay, so this question is about the performance, I believe, is about the performance of the communication between an app and the database server, which is today on premises, you can put the app and the database on the same physical server, while in the cloud, that's not possible. This is another question we often get, and not just SQL MI team, but in Azure in general, which is how do I make sure that two or more of my services are physically collocated in the nearest possible proximity to improve the performance. There's a lot of work in flight in order to improve these capabilities. Proximity placement groups are the first step in that direction. They do not support Azure SQL Managed Instance today, but we are looking into how we can bring an increasingly larger number of Azure services into this or a similar concept, so that you can get performance benefits of collocating your app and your database and other services together. Hyperscale is set only for a single DB, but in many cases there will be multiple databases where their ports are being pulled. So is there a plan to have more than one DB included in Hyperscale? So today you can have many Hyperscale databases. So I'm not sure if I'm understanding the point of the question correctly. If the person asking the question can clarify, please. All the DB connection with Windows Auth supported in SQL MI. Windows Auth is not supported in SQL MI today.
Yeah, not at this time, but we are aware of this and we're considering improving.
One of the major asks as well.
in this area.
So something we're looking at as part of our roadmap.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we answered all the questions, or we're just on time.
This is incredible. We are just in time and all questions answered. I mean, it couldn't get better than this. Perfect.
Yeah, I answered one question by typing, which I just like to verbally say. And the question was if we support SCOM monitoring for managed instance. I've actually worked on that project, and I'm proud to say that we have released a public preview of SCOM management pack just last week.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dani. And thanks, Vladimir. Thank you so much for joining us today, taking out time out of your busy schedule. You're managing such a big team, and I know it's even gets a little more difficult as team gets bigger and we have to work from home and just be remotely connected. So thanks so much for your time. It has been incredible hosting you. What an honor it was.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And we're here to, sadly, we can't meet you all folks in person. So a virtual conference has its pros, but also its cons. But please reach out. We'll try our best to answer any remaining questions, and let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. We're collecting all questions from our attendees. We'll sort them out over the weekend and send across to all the speakers.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.